Welcome back, everybody. So glad to be here with you. I hope your day is going wonderfully and your week is going wonderfully. Today is Tuesday. Also, I keep forgetting to greet all the people who are watching this not live, but who are catching up with us as the days go along. And the further we go along, the more likely that is. So welcome. If this is your first time watching, don't worry. I'm going to give you a brief intro, a previously on little paragraph before we jump in to the reading. Also, I thought it'd be fun today to try something different. I know it's hard to come up with questions for me at the end of every single chapter. So I thought today, instead of fielding questions at the end of the chapter, I would have a question for you. And that question is this. As I'm reading today, we're going to be reading chapter 10 of the Crescent Stone. It's a chapter called The Stone Flower. And in this chapter, we meet some new people again, called the Aluvorians, who live in this world that Madeline has come to, the Sunlit Lands. And we're going to interact with a plant that is called a stone flower. So my question to you is this. We have a significant moment involving a plant, a flower, in this chapter. So what I'd love to hear from you while I'm reading is, what is a significant event in your life that involved a plant or a flower? It can be something funny. It can be something serious. It can be something that might not be consequential to the rest of us. It doesn't matter. But what is something in your life that has happened that was significant, that involved a plant or a flower? Okay, people are starting to show up. The Scales family says hello, 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 hello. Good to have you all here. Always glad to hear from you. The Reeves are here. Hello, Reeves. So glad you're here. Who else is here? Give us a shout. We're going to go ahead and get started in a minute. The Sims are here. Good. Where's Dr. Awesome? Dr. Awesome, just because it's like the middle of the night or something where you live. Aaron's here. Hi, Aaron. I hope that your roommate is not listening to this right now. That story was so funny. For those who missed it the other day, Aaron's Bluetooth computer was connected to her Bluetooth, so her roommate ended up hearing part of this in the shower instead of her being able to hear it, which I almost started laughing. Aaron, I almost started laughing during the reading. Because I was so tickled by that. It made me laugh. Aha, there's Dr. Awesome. Good. I'm glad. All right. Well, I'm sure Deborah will be joining us and a few others. But let's go ahead and dive in. Chapter 10. Now, again, remember, Erin says she is currently walking in the park, so no Bluetooth shower readings today, so far as we know. Well, this is the perfect segue because Madeline's about to take a walk herself. This is chapter 10 of the Crescent Stone. And remember, while I'm reading, be thinking about, is there an event in your life that had to do with a plant, a flower, something where a plant was significant to you? Put that in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. So here we go. Chapter 10, the stone flower. Previously on the Crescent Stone, Madeline Oliver has a terminal breathing disease. She is offered a cure by a magical being from another world, a guy named Henry. He's one of the Elenil. He says for a human year of service, he'll heal her. Service in fighting these horrible creatures, the Skim, who we met last chapter. She agrees and goes, even though it means leaving behind her boyfriend, or her ex-boyfriend, actually, Darius. And the one who goes with her is her chemistry partner, Jason, who's a bit of a mess. He's made a promise to never tell a lie. And problems often follow him because of this. Madeline has arrived and overheard Honolly telling an older woman, Mrs. Raymond, that she was actually prophesied to save them somehow. So the Skim are going to be after her. People are going to be trying to kill her, which she did not know was part of the deal. So she stayed the night in a place called Transition House with her new roommate, a woman named Shula Bishara. So that's where this chapter picks up. Oh, and today she has to go. She's not allowed to interact with other people, including Jason, in the Sunlit Lands until she's taken to hear a specific story. It's one of the rules of the Sunlit Lands. She has to go hear this story before she can interact with her friends again. So that's where we pick up. Chapter 10, The Stone Flower. Thus the Alavorians left in peace to populate the woods of the world. They are a gentle race, though some say they have come to love their trees more than people. A great misfortune. From the Ordering of the World, an Elendil story. Put these on, Shula said, handing Madeline a pair of thin white gloves. Madeline had already put on the white dress with its high neck, long sleeves, and low hemline. She spun for Shula. I'm not getting married, am I? The gloves fit perfectly, just like the dress. She hoped there wouldn't be a veil. Every newcomer wears white for 28 days, so the citizens know to be patient when you don't know the culture. Sunlight filtered in through their open window. A trellis of a mint-like plant grew outside, and the scent wafted to them. The temperature was perfect, and Madeline hated to cover herself completely when she could be baking in the sun. Mrs. Raymond brought them breakfast, a warm cereal similar to oatmeal with tart purple berries on the side. In the future, they'd be eating in the common room, but since she didn't have the basic orientation, Madeline wasn't supposed to be with the others. She sat on the windowsill and took a deep breath, marveling again at her return to health. How did you come to be here, Shula? Shula pulled on a pair of long leather boots. Like everyone else, the Elendil offered me my heart's desire in exchange for fighting the Skim. She frowned. Those monsters. I would have fought them for nothing. What did you get in exchange? Shula sighed. I'll share when you do. She held up her left wrist, and the silver tattoo glittered on her arm. As you can see, some of the bargain must be the same as yours. Madeline's own tattoo shone in the morning light. When do I start to fight? Her heart pounded in her chest. Fighting scared her. She didn't want to hurt anyone, let alone kill them, and it seemed clear people were talking about full-out war. Then again, from what Hanali said, the Skim were trying to kill her. So maybe it would be self-defense. They won't make you fight until you want to fight, Shula said, shrugging into a light jacket. Today we'll talk to the storyteller. The Elendil will give you a sort of history lesson to show you how unique and wonderful the Court of Far-Seeing is before they ask you to defend it. When your first month is done, they'll know you well enough to give you your job for the rest of your stay here. You'll probably get some local work in the city. Until then, maybe guard duty or running messages, something like that. Shula wore jeans and a t-shirt under her jacket. When do I get to wear normal clothes? Madeline asked. Shula grinned. In 28 days or so. Though plenty of humans wear local clothes even once their month is up, easier to blend in. She slipped on a thin pair of leather gloves and pulled the door open. They made their way down the stairs and out the front door. Should we tell Mrs. Raymond we're leaving? We're not prisoners, Madeline. We come and go whenever we like. Then why wasn't she allowed to see Jason? There was no carriage waiting. Shula shrugged and said maybe Hanali was meeting them at the storyteller's. Not a big deal. It's not far to walk. They made their way toward the city center. Madeline couldn't get over the sights and sounds of the place. They walked through a market full of silk, strange fruits, and food cooking over coals and metal troughs. The different types of people amazed her also. She saw what she could only assume were more Elendil dressed in elaborate clothes that covered them almost completely. They were all tall and painfully thin. She saw guards and soldiers walking along the cobbled street. They had swords on their belts. Most of them were human. Apparently, there were only a handful of Elendil soldiers. There are no street signs, Madeline said. Shula nodded. The Elendil don't have a written language. They're illiterate? Most of them, yeah. Why would you need to write when you can just speak your message to a bird and have it delivered? Most everything we accomplish through reading, they do with magic, and without all the trouble of learning to read. Madeline felt a small disappointment at that. She had hoped to read some Elendil fiction. She wondered what magical people would write about and what their fantastical stories would hold. Then again, she was on her way to a storyteller, wasn't she? And no doubt she could scavenge the occasional book this year or ask Hanali for some. The humans must have hidden some away. All colors and sizes of people moved in and out of the shop. Short, hairy men and women with dark, almost gray skin wove through the crowd. She saw one man wrapped in a series of cloths so that only his eyes could be seen, eyes which seemed to glow from within the shade of the cloths. She even saw a woman whose skin appeared to be blue, darting beneath the shadows of a rounded trellis. The blue woman stopped to talk to two human guards. Are all these people Elenil? Shula laughed. Those shorter people, those are the Megrim. Did you see the man wrapped in cloths with the glowing eyes? Kokri, desert people. They love stories even more than the Elenil. For the Elenil, stories are almost sacred. For the Kokri, they're life. They use story as a form of currency. The greatest storytellers are considered the wealthiest among them. What about the blue woman? Shula stopped in her tracks. Oh, probably an Aluvorian. Where? Madeline scanned the crowd. Over by the trellis there, talking to the two guards. The two human guards waved to Shula, and one of them called her over. Shula sighed. Stay here for a second. Technically, I shouldn't introduce you until you've met a storyteller. I'm sure it's just a quick bit of business. She stripped off her coat. Hold this, please. Shula strode into the crowd toward the guards and the blue woman. The four of them had an animated conversation. Shula clearly was unhappy with the guards. One of them gave a shrill whistle, and a small bird darted down to rest on his finger. He spoke to it. The bird tweeted twice, then zipped into the air and sped past Madeline toward the city center. Madeline watched the bird go, reminded of the hummingbird she and Jason had followed into the Sunlit Lands, and the birds Hanali had released when they arrived. She studied the square, dazzled by the riot of colors, the sounds of the people calling out about their wares, and the sweet smells coming from the food stalls. A hummingbird whirred by. Madeline watched it as it flew through the crowd, flitting around, hovering by a Megrim here and Elenil there, and then finally zipping across the crowded square to linger beside an old bent woman in a straw hat festooned in flowers, standing in what appeared to be a tiny garden built into the side of a building. The garden lady. Her back was to Madeline. The hummingbird hovered by the lady for a moment, then burst off in a straight line along the main avenue. Madeline stole a quick glance at Shula, who didn't seem any closer to ending her conversation. Shula had told her to stay put, but it wasn't that far to walk over to the garden lady. Madeline would keep an eye out for Shula and come back as soon as she was done with her business. The garden lady, still in the small garden built along the city path, stood talking to a woman whose skin was a slightly green color, like someone who was standing under a sunlit canopy of trees. In fact, on closer inspection, her skin was multiple shades of green, as if a pattern of leaves was cast upon it, and the darker spots moved, like leaves in a breeze. Her hair was thick, short, and deep green, like a healthy moss, and she wore a nut-brown robe with silver trim. The two women stood in front of a wall thick with ivy. Madeline came closer, feeling foolish for not knowing the garden lady's name. She didn't know how to call out to her. She moved closer, came around so she could see the garden lady's face, and gasped. It wasn't her. She had a gourd instead of a head, berries for eyes, and a mouth made of trailing ivy. Madeline stumbled backward, trying to distance herself and the strange scarecrow version of the garden lady, but green fingers wrapped around her bicep. They felt almost sticky, like a plant with tiny barbs on it. They didn't hurt, just felt like they would cling if she pulled away. I'm sorry, the green woman whispered. She came barely to Madeline's shoulder. We did not know how else to get you away from them. Madeline cast a hurried look at Shula. She still hadn't noticed that Madeline had wandered off, which was good. She wasn't sure now. She didn't want Shula to know she had immediately disobeyed her, but she also felt nervous that Shula didn't know where she was. Away from who? From my friends? Yes, and from the Elenil, the woman said. My sister is distracting them for a moment, but soon they will see. My people need your help. My help? I just got here. The woman's teeth were white as birch bark, which is why you are wearing the white, we know. But there is trouble in Aluvoria, and it is tangled. But the eldest believes you are the one we must grow alongside. Madeline's head swam. Who told you that? How can I help when I have to serve the Elenil for the next year? And what does grow alongside even mean? The woman's grip tightened. It is a simple question. Will you help my people? Madeline could barely help herself. She was obligated to the Ellenil for a year, and then she needed to go home. She couldn't stay here forever in this fantasy land, even though it was something she'd always dreamed of. But the idea of a quest, a goal, a good deed to be done rang in her like a bell. Tears formed in the woman's eyes and slipped down her green cheeks. Please. Madeline took both the woman's hands in her own. Of course I will, she said. It is a promise, then, the woman said with a desperate intensity. Her eyes widened, looking at something over Madeline's shoulder. She turned around to see the garden lady, the real one, pushing her way through the crowd, still a good distance away, but headed straight toward them, her face flushed, her eyebrows low, her jaw jutting out, and a monstrous frown on her face. I must go, the green woman said. At the same moment, the garden lady bellowed, Make a dummy of me, will you, child? And a gourd for my head? Oh, you and I will have words. Yes, we will. Humans and Ellenil pushed to get out of her way. A megrim scurried from under her feet, and every eye in the square was turned toward her. Madeline looked at Shula, whose eyes moved from the garden lady toward the object of the old woman's wrath. When Shula saw Madeline, her eyebrows rose as if to say, That is not where I left you. Our time is at an end, the Aluvorian woman said. She held up her hand. For you. In her tiny palm was a flower, bright red as a spot of blood on a handkerchief. It was the size of a 50-cent piece, delicate and lovely. Thank you, Madeline said, and reached for it, moved by the woman's generosity and kindness. Green tendrils unfolded from beneath the flower and grasped hold of Madeline's hand, climbing onto her and settling on her right wrist. Don't be startled, the woman said. It's a stone flower. They grow on the stumps of dead trees only in Aluvoria. They glow in the dark. It likes the warmth of your arm. That's why it's wrapping onto you. Thank you, Madeline said again. It was beautiful and like nothing she had seen before, though the crawling tendrils reminded her unpleasantly of spiders' legs. Sorry, Aaron. I know you hate them. Come to us in Aluvoria, the green woman said, then gave a yelp at the sight of the garden lady barreling ever closer, and turned and ran straight into the wall of ivy. There was a shaking and rattling of leaves, and the woman disappeared completely. The blue woman came sprinting from a different direction, running full speed into the wall of ivy and, like her sister, disappearing somehow into the leaves. The garden lady huffed up to the wall, studied it for a moment, then paused to look at Madeline. So you made it, she said, and not a moment too soon. I don't even know your name, Madeline said, blurting out the first thing she thought. Well, child, that was never part of the bargain, was it? What did those two want with you? She asked me to come to Aluvoria and help her people. The garden lady turned her head as if trying to see Madeline in a different light or at a different angle. Interesting, she said. Interesting, yes. But not any time soon, dear. She shook her head. No, it will be too late by then. You have adventures and duties to perform for the Ellenil first. But what should I? The lady held her palm up toward Madeline. I gave you free advice once already, dear, and not another word until you've heeded the first. She paused. Now what's that on your wrist, child? Did those two give you that flower? The flower's petals moved on their own, as if an unseen breeze ruffled them. Yes. Of all the addle-pated... Why, those little... Didn't they think for a minute? The old woman's scowl deepened and her face turned nearly scarlet. I'll pull them up by the roots, she snapped, and without another word she put one arm in front of her and pushed through the ivy, grumbling as she went. Madeline put her hands into the ivy and pushed as well, but there was a stone wall behind the vines, nowhere to go, no way to follow. Shula made her way over to Madeline. Who was that green woman? I don't know, an Aluvorian. She asked me to come to Aluvoria. That's strange, Shula said. There aren't many Aluvorians in the city, but one was just telling those guards she had heard a skim plotting to sneak in. She said that was her sister, Madeline said. They both ran as soon as they saw the garden lady. Shula gave her a quizzical look. The who? The old lady I was talking to. I don't know her name. I call her the garden lady. Shula gave her the sort of look you give a confused child. I didn't see her. We sent word for one of the Elenil to come look into the supposed skim invasion, but the woman slipped away while we were waiting. Ah, here's Rondello now. An Elenil on a white stag came bounding through the crowd, the alarm bird tweeting and flitting around his head. The Elenil dismounted in an easy leap to the ground. He moved like a dancer, smooth and graceful and precise. There was never a person so beautiful in all of human memory, Madeline thought. This is Rondello, Shula said. Well, it's hard to explain before you know how things work. A captain of the guard, Rondello said, and he smiled like a sunrise on a cold morning. Madeline couldn't think of a single thing to say. She wanted to tell him all about the garden lady, the Alivorians, her journey to the Sunlit Lands, her friend Jason, Honnelly's crazy fashion sense, Darius. She blushed, remembering that she sort of had a boyfriend. She opened her mouth, not sure what was about to come out. I'm holding Shula's jacket, she said. I was going to say Prince, Shula said, grinning. I forgot what an effect you have on people when they first meet you, Rondello. She asked me to hold it, Madeline said. Her face felt even hotter. Rondello grinned. The lopsided smile made him even more charming. He looked more human than the other Elenil. He looked like a statue, breathed to life. Miss Madeline, welcome to the Sunlit Lands. This is my companion, Evernew. The white stag inclined its head, its antlers tilting toward the ground. A pleasure to meet you, she said. The surreal experience of greeting a stag broke her out of Rondello's spell. Where is this Aluvorian? Rondello asked. My apologies, Shula said. She slipped away. I thought it would be best to call for you when she said she had heard some skim plodding away into the city, though. You did the right and responsible thing, Rondello said. I've heard rumors of the Black Skulls trying to find a shadow entrance to the city. Shula spit on the ground. Those three. They're not the sort to sneak around, it seems to me. They're after something, Rondello said, and their battle tactics lately are different, new. Nothing we can't handle for a few hours each dusk, Shula said. Still, it troubles me that the Aluvorian would appear and then slip away so quickly, as if trying to distract us almost. I should get back, Rondello said, swinging onto Evernew's bare back. Ah, what's this? Madeline followed his gaze. Oh, she lifted her hand. It's a stone flower. Another Aluvorian gave it to me. Shula stepped back, a look of horror on her face. Don't move, Madeline. It's just a flower. The tendrils tightened on her arm. Don't move. Madeline froze. It's triggered, Rondello said. You're fast, Shula said to Rondello. You can do it. It's triggered, he repeated. She has to do it herself. It's no longer about speed, but precision. Okay, Shula said. Madeline, stone flowers they're poisonous. Madeline relaxed. She wasn't going to eat it. Not poisonous, Rondello said. Venomous. Shula shook her head. They sting like a bee. They're carnivorous. If it stings you, you're going to be paralyzed. In Aluvoria, they swarm you and there's only one, so you'll just be paralyzed, but there's no cure. They're called stone flowers because people who are stung are frozen, like statues. She snapped her fingers and Madeline looked back up from the flower to Shula. The stinger, it's on the bottom, between the tendrils. It extends the stinger by lifting its petals. So long as those petals stay flat, you're safe. If you put your finger slowly in the center so it can't close its petals, it can't sting, then we can pull it off. Like grabbing a snake behind the head. Exactly. Only slow, Madeline. Why would that green woman try to hurt her? It didn't make any sense. Madeline realized with a distant disappointment that she had forgotten to ask for her name, too. But now she needed to focus. There was a venomous plant on her wrist. Being careful not to move the arm with her deadly corsage, Madeline took one finger and reached slowly across. The flower tensed like a spider getting ready to leap. She paused, waiting for it to relax, but it didn't. The petals quivered, then started to close. No way would her finger get there in time if she stuck with the slow and steady plan. One sharp breath in, here she was, day 2 in Fantasyland, about to be stung by a flower and put out of commission. She'd be able to breathe, but not move, no more running or walking or health. She wasn't about to let that happen. She exhaled hard and at the same instant struck like a snake for the center of the flower. Her finger wedged partway in, but the petals closed halfway. She pressed down until she managed to pry the petals apart. The tendrils of the flower gyrated crazily, slapping at her free hand. It snagged hold of her left hand, released her right wrist, and swung to her other arm. She shook, but it didn't come off. It tightened down hard, and before she could get her finger in, the petals snapped closed, and a monstrous cracking sound echoed from her wrist. The plant shuddered, and the tendrils loosened. The bright red flower faded and fell to the ground. Madeline examined her wrist. A pinprick of blood stood out precisely in the center of the bracelet's glowing face beneath her skin. Rondello's gloved hands were on Madeline's arm. He pushed her sleeve up. "Apologies," he said. "The majestic one, protector, the stinger implanted." Shula stabbed the flower through the center with a sword. Bending down beside it, she said, "It's spent, Rondello, dead." Madeline felt the whole market fall away from her. She could only see the tiny mark where the flower had struck. "What happens now?" she asked. Shula hugged her. "Lie down, Madeline," she said, trying to be gentle. "I'm okay, Shula, honestly. It will be easier to move you when the paralysis sets in if you're lying down." Madeline lay down, waiting for the venom to take effect, trying not to cry. Rondello sent a bird for help. "Why is someone trying to kill a newcomer?" he asked. "Who is she?" Madeline felt a little annoyed that he was talking to Shula as if Madeline wasn't lying at their feet. Shula said, "I don't know why, but the Aluvorians went to a lot of trouble to do this. One distracted me with the guards, the other pulled Madeline away." Rondello's frown deepened. "The Aluvorians are the most peaceful people in the Sunlit Lands. What drove them to this?" "I don't think they were trying to kill me," Madeline said, wiggling her fingers so they could see she wasn't paralyzed. After a few minutes of being ignored, she stood up and put her hands on her hips. "Obviously, whatever happened, the poison didn't take. So can we get on with our day?" Shula and Rondello exchanged looks. "Should we take her back to the dorms?" Shula asked. Rondello scratched Evernew behind the ears, watching Madeline with careful interest. "No, but I'll join you wherever you're headed. A little extra company today can only be good." 3 times he made Madeline repeat the description of the woman who had given her the flower, once to him and Shula, once to the guards, and a 3rd time to a bird which he released. "They will search for her," he told Madeline, "though since she escaped through magical means, I fear it is unlikely they will find her. Come, let us walk together." Shula walked on one side of Madeline with Rondello on the other. The stag walked behind them. Shula's hand kept moving to Madeline's arm as if to steady her. "I feel fine," Madeline said. "Sometimes," Shula said, "when a snake bites, it doesn't release venom. Maybe it was like that." Madeline shuddered. She hated to think she had avoided paralysis by a quirk of fate. She made a mental note not to accept any more flowers. She rubbed her hand where the flower had stung her. There was an irritated red mark on her skin, but nothing more. The end of chapter 10. All right. That is a much more important chapter than I thought it was when I first wrote it, and becomes a really important scene in book 2. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? Micah has joined us and says, "Hi, Dad." Hey, Micah. How's it going up there? She's upstairs. Let's see what the Barron family has to tell us. Malachi, age 11, has happy memories of climbing our apple tree in Colorado before we moved to Washington 3 years ago. All the kids had many adventures in it. We don't have a tree now. Sad face. Malachi, I understand exactly how you feel. We have a beautiful maple tree in our backyard that the kids love to climb, and they have often said that one of the saddest things if we were ever to leave this house would be leaving that tree. They like to climb it, sit in it, just sit there and talk. They've had a bunch of their friends up there. It's a really fun thing. Yeah, so I understand that, Malachi. I could see why that would be a sad memory. The Sims say, my grandmother decorated the altar of the church with her African violets for our wedding 50 years ago, April 25th. Wow. That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. African violets are gorgeous plants. If you've never seen them, you all should look it up. And they're really interesting plants. You can't water them in the traditional way. You have to have a special type of pot to water them because they like to soak the water up. They don't like water hitting them from the top. So oftentimes it's a two-part pot. The top part goes in, it has a string that lowers into the water in the bottom part of the pot and just sucks it up into the rest, which is pretty cool. Yeah, love African violets. And that's a beautiful story. Thank you. Okay, let's see what Dr. Awesome has. This story has plants and stinging. I don't think I can read your whole comment, but let's see what I got here. When I was small, from 4 to 8 years old, I had the perfect climbing tree in my front yard. I used to just hang out up there and make scrub jay calls. I'm sure the neighbors love that. I'm sure they do. One day, a wasp got stuck in my clothes and started stinging or biting me over and over. We counted 10 bumps later. I just stood in the tree crying until some older girls saw me and ran to get my mom, who came out and rescued me. I just think how weird it must have been I assume for them. Ooh, that is horrible. Oh man, we have box elder bugs in our backyard right now, and it is driving us all nuts. They're not dangerous or anything. They're just annoying. There's like literally 30 of them on the window at all times. Woo. Okay, let's see what Aaron says. My favorite flower is a plumeria. The first time I smelled it was while living in Costa Rica. Pura vida. Every time I smell one now, I'm happily reminded of my time in Costa Rica. Oh, that's awesome. And she put a little emoji of a flower there. Is that a plumeria? I don't even know. That's awesome. Ugh, I love Costa Rica. I want some guanabana right now. Guanabana shake. Ugh, that'd be amazing. Let's see. What does Hannah have to tell us? Hannah likes to read in trees. She's 14. However, in El Paso, we don't have many of those, so she rarely gets a chance. Oh, Hannah, I'm sorry. My 17-year-old likes to take pictures in giant trees. Like if a branch is bigger than her, she likes to climb up on it, get her picture taken in it, which is a lot of fun. I like to read in trees too, but I'm a little larger for getting into trees. I haven't done it in a long time, which is why the good Lord invented hammocks. I use those now. Thank you all for sharing those stories. I love them all. That was wonderful. Couple quick reminders. This Friday, we will have Henry Lien with us. I just talked to him yesterday. He is going to talk to us about his book, and also he will be doing a song for us, which is really cool. Future Legend, Peace Sprout Chen, Future Legend of Skate and Sword. Great little series. The first 2 books are out. The third is on the way. So that should be fun to hear from Henry on Friday. As always, Tyndale.com is still taking orders and sending books if you're trying to find the Crescent Stone or the sequel to the Crescent Stone, the Heartwood Crown, or any other books that Tyndale might have. Those are available. Oasis Audio also has many audiobooks. I know a lot of us are listening to audiobooks at this time. Of course, my favorite is The Crescent Stone, as read by my dear friend Natasha, who we'll have to have on the show at some point. And then lastly, don't forget, every time you comment, every time you like, whether on Facebook or YouTube, it brings more viewers, more into our little community. And of course, if you subscribe, it's by far the easiest way to make sure you don't catch the next episode. I'm trying to keep them coming out there. I know it gets a little confusing. That's facebook.com/Michelatus Books. I'm a big believer in you learning to spell my name, even though it took me 6 years to learn to spell my own. I was 6 years old before I could spell my name. Or on YouTube, it's youtube.com/Matt Michelatos Books. I think we have one more comment here. Jess says, smiley face. Hi, Jess. So that's it for today. My friends, stay safe, stay well, wash your hands, keep your distance. Do not climb up trees that are full of wasps or let wasps into your clothes. I think Beth would agree. This is not to be encouraged. If you have a chance to drink a guanabana shake, please do. If you can find a tree to read in, do it. If you get a chance to have an African violet, it's well worth your time. And Malachi, I hope you find a tree nearby that you can climb. My friends, be safe, be well. and I'll talk to you tomorrow.